Hi guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and today we are taking a look at Roth Theodorovic pistols. There are 6 of them here, which is probably more than can be found in any other single location anywhere. And what I'd like to do today is take a look through the different features of these guns. Now, there's already a really good video assessing the history and especially the context of how these fit into the Austrian military pistol trials of the late 1890s and early 1900s, and that is a video over on the C&Rsenal channel. So, if you're interested in the context, where these fit in history, go check out Othaius' video on C&Rsenal. It's excellent, and it does a really good job of contextualizing these pistols. If, however, you would like a whole lot more detail on not just these, but some of the other Roth Theodorovic pistols, well, then you need to go buy a book, and that would be this book, Vom Ursprung der Selbstladpistole, or something that sounds vaguely like that, by Motz and Schuey. This is a fantastic book, and it is the resource for these guns. It is, of course, in German, because if it were in English, that would be just way too easy. So, with that aside, let's go ahead and take a look at the actual development of these pistols. I should point out here that as they're set up right now, they go from early serial numbers, we have number 8 here, to late serial numbers, this is number 77, and then our centerpiece is actually, this is not a Roth Theodorovic at all, it is a Roth Krnka, which was adopted as the M.7 Roth-Steyr. Well, this is pre-production gun serial number 7. Just thought that'd be a cool one to add in. Okay, let's start by putting this in some physical perspective. Here we have serial number 8. This was one of the very first Roth Theodorovic pistols, and it was actually in the original, the very first round of Austrian military testing. It's an Austrian acceptance marked gun. Next to it here, just so that you can see a comparison of the shape and the size, this is a 1902 German Trials Luger, a 1900 pattern Trials Luger. This thing, even this perspective, doesn't really fully let you appreciate just kind of how clunky and awkward these early Roth Theodorovics were, although you can probably see. If you look at the size of the trigger guards, this thing is almost a 2-finger trigger in the hand, and it's, you know, the top of your hand is just barely about at the midpoint of the vertical extent of the gun. In comparison, when we take a grip on a Luger, it is a fantastically ergonomic pistol, and well and suitably renowned for that quality. The Theodorovics, not so much. So who was this Theodorovic guy? We'll do a little bit of brief introduction here. He was named Vasa Theodorovic, and he was the guy who originally patented this firearm design. It is a rotating bolt, long recoil pistol, hammer fired, uses an integral internal magazine, 8 or 10 rounds depending on the model. And his patents were bought out by one George Roth. Roth was an Austro-Hungarian industrialist, manufactured ammunition and a lot of other non-gun goods. And he was very interested in finding interesting patents, buying them up, and developing them into commercially successful products. So he picked up Theodorovic's patent with the hope of developing it into an Austrian military contract pistol. Now, Theodorovic, it seems, didn't have a whole lot of involvement in this process. Again, check out the C&Rsenal video for more detail on this level of the internal politics at the Roth company. Ultimately, Roth would bring in another designer or engineer by the name of Roth Krnka to basically polish and finalize and improve these guns. Now, what these pistols all have in common are their markings. They're all marked with a GR patent marking up here, and that's for Georg Roth. He was the industrialist who financed this whole project, and it was at his factory that all of these prototype guns were made. Now, this particular gun has an Austrian military acceptance mark there, dated 1897, and all of them will have a serial number right in this location, and this is the sum total of the markings that you will find on any of them. As the design progressed, there are a couple general features that we will see happen. Basically, the guns are going to get smaller and less awkward as they go on. So development starts here, runs down this way, and then here, and then this is our most modern, latest production example. And you can see things like the trigger guard is going to get smaller over time. The wood grips are going to get shorter. In particular, this protrusion up at the top is going to get shorter as the guns progress. The bottom of the grip is going to go from flat to sort of rounded to very rounded. The barrels get shorter as we go. Again, you can see this knurled section out in the front. This is because these are long recoil pistols, so there's a large chunk of the barrel that reciprocates back into the frame when these guns are fired. And the protruding aspect of the barrel, that's going to reduce in length over the development sequence of the guns. So here we have the first two. This is serial number 8. It is an 1896 pattern gun. This one is serial number 27, and it is an 1897 pattern gun. A couple changes you can see, and these are really pretty detailed, smallish changes. The overall operating mechanism is the same throughout all of these, but you'll notice the screw that attaches the side plate moves on these, the style of the knurling of the back of the bolt changes, and the length of the exposed set of barrel changes. There's the other side for reference. And looking at this one, you can see serial number 27. In 1897, there was the first real competition that this gun in particular was in, and that was against, among others, the Piper gas seal revolver and the 1894 blow-forward Mannlicher pistols. And in competition against those two, this thing actually came out looking pretty good. So Theodorovic, or Roth, was invited to improve the gun and bring it back for a subsequent trial. Now the next two that we are looking at here are 1898 pattern guns. And these didn't directly participate in any Austrian trials, but these were actually, it was guns right in this lineage that went to a couple other trials. They were tested by the Swiss and also tested by the Dutch. So the two that we have here are serial number 39 and serial number 61. It was number 59 that actually went to the Swiss trials. I'm not sure about the Dutch trials gun. And the differences we can see here are that the grips are getting shorter. The bottom of the grip is now a bit rounded. Instead of having a lanyard loop that just rotates, now we have a separate lanyard ring that pivots back and forth. None of these guns are actually identical. It seems like every single individual gun in the Roth Theodorovic development process had some change. Even within these two, you can see that this pin location moves here. The size of this locking piece changes a bit. The style of the release lever here changes a bit. Just nothing's static. And the one, probably actually the most significant improvement by number 61 is the addition of this decocker lever. And this will stay around through the rest of the production, at least all of the examples here. There may have been some later ones that experimented with removing it again, for all I know. But when you have the hammer fully cocked, pressing that will allow you to decock it. One other substantial change we see between the 1896 and 97 guns like this one and the 1898 pattern is the change in removal and disassembly method. On the earlier guns, there is a screw here that holds this side plate on. By the 1898 pattern guns, there is instead a latch. So I can push this in, rotate this latch down, and remove the side plate like that. Now, I'm not going to do it on this particular gun. I do have videos on a couple of these pistols individually, and there's some footage in there taking the side plate off. So if you're interested in seeing the internals of these guns, definitely check out that video. Moving on now, we have number 61, and we now have number 70. At this point, we're starting to get kind of close to the end of this production development cycle. So 70 is actually fairly similar. This is classified as a model, a first variant model of 1900. And it's this gun that would first exhibit some of the work of Roth Krnka. He was hired full-time by Roth in 1898, and so it was presumably with these guns that his influence begins to show. Although there is not that much external difference that we can make out here. We do have a single pin here that has been replaced by a series of pins. Both of these guns have the decocking button. The front sights are different. Serial number 61 has a half moon, a semicircular front sight. Serial number 70 there has a patridge front sight, a fin style. And then last but not least, unless you mean least in terms of actual mass of the pistol, in which case it is, we have number 77, which is of the pattern that was actually used in the Austrian, the 1901 Austrian trials. These trials would continue on and off through 1904, and it was in this trial that finally the Roth Theodorovic pistol would end up not being one of the finalists. So it would be thrown out in this trial. The trial also included the C96 Mauser, the Mannlicher 1901, the Rast-Gasser revolver, the Luger, and also a separate design by Georg Roth, in fact the Roth Krnka. So Krnka had been hired to improve these designs, and he did that, but he also had his own ideas on a better system. And Krnka put together a rotating bolt short recoil system, which would end up winning the trials and being adopted as the model of 1907 Austrian cavalry pistol. Once we're at this point with this 1901 pattern, Roth Theodorovic, this has actually become a reasonably handy pistol. It still looks kind of awkward, but this one's not bad to handle. Something to point out, this grip safety is actually a tambour grip safety, and you'll find these on a couple of other different pistols from the era. This wasn't an original Roth factory thing, although it may have been, it may have been put in at the factory, may not, but it wasn't really part of the original pistol design. That was added by someone else separately. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this look at a couple of very much forgotten weapons. This is one of the really obscure corners of Austrian military trials pistol design, and they are fantastically cool guns for their really weird looks, their really weird mechanical operation, and I guess it should be no surprise that these guns, well, failed to develop into anything more substantial in military pistol history. In fact, it's kind of impressive that they got through as many trials as they did just from the weirdness of the system. So anyway, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you very much for watching.